close your eyes and let the weight of the day gently melt from your shoulders. You are safe now. There's no need to rush, nowhere to be. Just listen to the softness of this story and allow your breath to slow. Inhale gently and exhale slowly. Let the outside world grow quieter and quieter with every passing second. Let your body grow heavy, like you've been wrapped in a warm woolen blanket, freshly lifted from the fire-warmed stones. Imagine your toes unclenching, your fingertips relaxing, your jaw softening, all the little tightnesses melting away like snow under the sun. A soft breeze drifts past your cheeks, and you can almost hear the distant rustle of herbs drying on wooden beams above you. Everything here moves slowly, gently, safely. You're safe to rest. You're safe to listen. You're safe to fall asleep. Our story today sets its roots in a forgotten corner of the medieval world, tucked quietly between misty riverbanks and moss-covered stone cottages. It is a place not many speak of, and fewer remember a Leech house. A place where healing and folklore interweave, where silence is kept like a ritual, and where jars filled with wriggling creatures line the shelves like tiny guardians of the blood. You wake to the soft creak of wooden shutters opening just a crack, letting in the dim gray of early morning. Somewhere a bird chirps once, then stops, as if it knows better than to sing too loudly near this house. The stone floor beneath your feet is cold and uneven, but you don't mind. You are not here as a patient. Not yet. Today you've been allowed, just for a day, to shadow the woman known only as Mother Briel, keeper of leeches, healer of wounds, feared by some and quietly adored by others. You rise, dressing in simple linen, the fabric coarse against your arms. A wooden pail sits outside your door, filled to the brim with river water, faintly clouded with silt. Beside it, a bundle of dried lavender tied with twine. You pick it up, breathing it in. Even the air seems to whisper here, slow, careful, still. The Leech house stands at the edge of a forgotten path, where the trees lean close and the reeds by the river grow tall enough to touch the sky. It is not a large house, 1 story high, with a thatched roof greened over by moss and time. But its presence is heavy sacred. The walls are built of stone, older than memory, and the wooden beams that hold it together have been darkened by centuries of fire smoke and tincture steam. When you step inside, it feels like walking into the belly of an old story. Mother Briel is already awake. She does not speak when you enter. She nods once, her long gray braid tucked beneath a faded scarf. Her hands are stained with years of herbal dye, and her eyes are the color of wet bark. Her robe is simple, but the belt she wears is heavy with pouches, each filled with something different. Crushed thyme, dried rue, a charm etched into bone. She gestures for you to follow, and you do, your feet silent on the rush-strewn floor. The Leech room is warmer than the rest of the house, thanks to the fire that's been burning low all night. Shelves line every wall, some lined with scrolls and jars of dried roots, others holding clay bowls and carefully labeled cloth sachets. But it's the far wall that draws your eyes. They're stacked in rows like tiny amphitheaters sit the leeches. Each glass jar holds a few, some small and brown, others long and striped. They do not float aimlessly, they move with purpose, curling and uncurling in a slow, hypnotic dance. The jars are filled with river water changed daily, and a few even contain small strips of linen soaked in blood. Brielle sees you staring and finally speaks, her voice barely above a whisper, yet strong as iron. They are older than we are, older than kings. They know things we've forgotten. You don't speak, you only nod. Today you are here to watch, to listen, to learn. She picks up a jar gently, holding it like one might hold a sleeping bird. The leech inside is thick and dark, like a velvet ribbon coiled in water. She sets it on a nearby table beside a small stool and motions for you to come closer. A woman has brought in a patient. Her hands are trembling, her skin pale. She carries the smell of sickness, but also of fear. The woman bows her head. My chest, tight, hurts to breathe. Mother Brielle nods. No judgment, no questions, only understanding. You watch as she gently opens the patient's gown, revealing thin, bruised skin. She takes a damp cloth, warms it near the fire, and wipes the area slowly. Then, with fingers practiced by decades, she removes the leech from its jar. It writhes, sensing warmth, sensing life. And then she places it. The creature latches on silently. No scream, no blood yet. Only waiting. You feel no horror. Only fascination. Over the next half hour, you watch in silence as the leech drinks. Mother Brielle hums, under her breath, some old song in a language you do not know. She tells you, softly, that leeches were once placed behind the ears for headaches, on the temples for anger, beneath the ribs for grief. They take more than blood, she says. They take burdens. The fire crackles gently. The light flickers against stone. The woman's breathing slows, her eyes close. The leech swells. When it's time, Brielle removes it gently, placing it in a small earthen bowl. She burns a pinch of myrrh near the patient's head and presses a cloth to the wound. Rest, she says. You will dream better tonight. And just like that, the woman is gone, vanishing back into the world like mist, returning to the river. You are left with the silence again, a silence so soft it almost hums. Brielle turns to you, her voice softer now. Do you know why people fear us? You shake your head. They think we meddle with the unseen, that we know things that shouldn't be known. But truly, we only listen better than most. You want to ask what she means, but her eyes have drifted away toward the jars, and you realize she is listening now, to the walls, to the leeches, to the breath of the house itself. Outside, the wind rustles through the reeds, and a heron lifts slowly from the riverbank, its wings heavy with evening light. You sit back on the stool, your heart calm, your breath slow, and feel yourself begin to drift. You wake again, though perhaps you never fully left. The line between sleep and story is thinner in the Leech house, like the skin between this world and something older. You shift slightly in your seat, hearing the soft creak of the wooden stool beneath you. Somewhere far away a crow caws once, and the sound fades like a thought you didn't mean to remember. The air is thicker now, warmed by firelight and steeped in the scent of damp linen, cloves, and wood smoke. You are still here, still safe. Brielle stands near the hearth now, slowly turning a dark metal pot suspended over the coals. Inside, a thick greenish liquid bubbles lazily in herbal reduction, she tells you, made from mugwort and yarrow. Good for balancing the humors, calming the stomach, quieting nightmares. She ladles it into a cup, presses it into your hands, and motions for you to sip. It tastes like earth and smoke and forgotten gardens. Not sweet, but not bitter either. something in between, something ancient. You glance toward the jars again. The leeches have settled, floating like ribbons left too long in a stream. They are calm now, full, satisfied. There is something strangely respectful about them. Not monstrous, not mindless, but purposeful. You think back to what Brielle said, that they take more than blood, that they carry burdens. She pulls a heavy wooden ledger from the cornered table and opens it slowly, her fingers trailing over rows of inked names. The pages are thick, the script careful and looping. These are the ones who've come, she says, not looking up. The ones who were desperate enough to try something they didn't understand. She tells you of a knight who came with a wound that wouldn't heal. Not a deep wound, but one that throbbed as if angry. He had seen a dozen physicians, led by barber surgeons, given elixirs and charms, yet nothing worked. Brielle placed 3 leeches near his ribs, beneath a scar shaped like a crescent. They drank, and when they finished, he wept. Not because the pain was gone, though it soon was, but because for the first time in months, he could sleep without dreaming of fire. Another named Annalise, a farmer's daughter with no appetite and no voice. She had not spoken in 2 seasons. Her father thought she was cursed. Brielle placed a leech on the back of her neck, where a faint mark, almost like a birthmark, pulsed beneath the skin. After the 3rd visit, she spoke a single word, cold. That was all. But it was enough to make her father fall to his knees and weep like a boy. The stories continue, softly spoken with long pauses. Brielle never rushes. She treats each memory as something delicate. You begin to see that this house is not just a place of healing, but of quiet witnessing. People come here not only to be cured, but to be believed, to be seen. Midday passes without notice. The fire burns low, and the light slants golden across the stone floor. Brielle invites you outside for a moment. The air is cooler now, touched with the scent of wild mint and wet bark. Behind the house is a garden not of vegetables, but of plants with names you only half recognize. Valerian, feverfew, horehound, comfrey. Some have been hung upside down to dry, their leaves crackling in the breeze like parchment. Others still bloom, shy and nodding in the shade. Brielle kneels beside a cluster of small blue flowers, borage, she tells you. For courage, she adds. Though most don't know it, she snips a few, sets them in her basket. You follow her through rows of rosemary and sage, and something that looks like lavender but smells faintly of metal. She does not speak much here, only moves. Quietly, reverently. You help her carry the bundle back inside. She begins tying the herbs in small bunches and hanging them from the ceiling beams, where others like them already sleep upside down like soft green bats. The smell fills the room, soothing and slightly bitter, like a memory of medicine. A knock at the door startles you. A man stands outside, one hand pressed to his temple. He looks weary, his cloak muddy from travel. Brielle opens the door without hesitation, steps aside to let him in. He nods toward you, but says nothing. She gestures for him to sit and takes his hand. His fingers are trembling. Pain behind the eyes, he says softly. Like fire. She nods. How long? 3 weeks. She places a gentle hand at the base of his skull, closes her eyes. You've not been sleeping. He shakes his head. Only shadows. Loud shadows. She begins preparing. She selects a specific jar. This leech is thinner, more restless. She places it gently on the man's temple. just at the edge of his hairline. You watch closely, amazed at the trust placed in this ancient ritual. The leech attaches. The man breathes slowly. Rio lights a stick of something fragrant juniper. You think and begins humming again, the same melody as before. This time you recognize the rhythm. It matches the heartbeat. Minutes pass. The man's breathing deepens. The leech drinks and drinks. And when it is done, she removes it with a practiced touch and presses a soft cloth to the spot. The man smiles faintly. I didn't see shadows this time. You will sleep, she says, but leave your window open. He nods, thanks her quietly, and leaves without fanfare. You're left with the warmth of the fire and the fading scent of herbs and old blood. Rio turns to you. There's more than healing in what we do, she says. Sometimes we just take the weight off their souls. The room is quiet now. You feel your limbs growing heavier. You wonder how many stories have passed through these walls. How many aches have been quieted. How many leeches have carried away things that words could not reach. You lie back on the stool, eyes half-lidded, the crackling fire echoing in your ears like soft rain. The jars shimmer faintly in the low light. The herbs sway overhead like sleeping spirits. The night grows closer, and still, the leech house listens. The fire has dimmed now, nothing left but a slow glow beneath the ashes, and you sit watching it like someone who has lived here for years. The silence wraps itself around you like a woolen shawl, and the only sounds left are the faint dripping of water from a wooden pail, and the soft whisper of wind brushing against the shutters. Somewhere in the far distance a bell rings. Not a church bell, smaller. A healing bell, Braille says later, meant to guide the spirits of pain out of the body. Not everyone believes in it, but in a place like this, belief doesn't need proof. It only needs stillness. You begin your next task under her guidance tending the leeches. She gives you a large glass jar, round and clouded, and instructs you to clean it carefully. You pour the old river water into a clay basin and reach for the fresh jar Breel has prepared cold and smelling of algae and stone. She shows you how to use a simple carved spoon to gently move the leeches one by one into their new home. You are gentle. They do not resist. Some curl around your finger just for a moment, then release. They seem to recognize calm hands. As you work, she speaks softly about how the leeches must be allowed to rest after feeding. Too many want to use them again too quickly, she murmurs, but they need time to sleep, just like we do. There is something deeply human in her tone, as if she doesn't draw lines between blood and spirit, between man and leech. You wonder how long she's done this, how long she's lived alone in this house, at the river's edge, surrounded by jars and herbs and strangers seeking mercy. She tells you about the ones who never came back. A boy with a fever no one could explain. A merchant who bled too freely, too often. He thought he had to be emptied to feel light, she says, her voice like wind brushing across an open page. She does not cry when she speaks of them, but there's something in her eyes that flickers when she touches their memory, like the moment just before a candle goes out. Afternoon fades gently into evening, as if time itself is cautious not to disturb the quiet in this place. You sit near the window now, looking out through old, bubbled glass. The river below catches the amber light of dusk, and for a moment you think you see something in the water, a ripple or a shape, but when you blink, it's gone. Breel follows your gaze, then nods. Sometimes the river listens too, she says. The next visitor arrives just before nightfall. A woman wrapped in thick wool, eyes rimmed with red. She carries a baby wrapped tightly to her chest, and she clutches a small cloth bag in her free hand. "He will not eat," she says softly, and he cries as if he is in two places at once. Briel's face does not change. She only opens the door wider and beckons her in. The woman kneels beside the hearth, unwrapping the child slowly. He is pale, eyes unfocused, his breathing uneven. Briel leans forward, places her ear to his chest. She listens, not just with her ears, but with something deeper. Then, without a word, she selects a leech from the warmest jar and places it on the soft skin near the baby's collarbone. You nearly flinch, but the baby does not cry. His breathing slows. His body relaxes. Briel hums again the same lullaby she used earlier. The room is so quiet you can hear the tiny slurp of the leech beginning its work. "He was born in a lightning storm," the mother whispers, eyes closed. "They say the wind steals part of a child's soul on those nights." Briel doesn't answer, but when the leech is done, she places it in a small clay bowl and sets it beside the fire as if it were an offering. The baby stirs, opens his eyes. He reaches for nothing in particular, then lets out a soft breath. Not a cry, just a breath. The mother begins to weep. She leaves behind a handful of dried figs and a small piece of carved wood. "For the house," she says. Briel nods and places the gift beside the others on a quiet shelf near the altar. The altar is not grand, just a plank of driftwood with little offerings from many hands. Beads, pebbles, feathers, even a single baby tooth wrapped in linen. You wonder how many people leave pieces of themselves here. How many things have been healed in this quiet place where nothing shouts and nothing rushes. Briel lets you sit alone for a while as night wraps itself around the world like a soft cloak. You close your eyes and lean against the wall, listening to the crackle of the fire, the distant trickle of the river, and the nearly inaudible rustle of the leeches curling in their jars. This house feels less like a building now, and more like a breathing thing, a quiet guardian of pain and peace, a keeper of forgotten rituals. You feel yourself growing sleepy. The herbs in the rafters release a deeper scent at night, something woody and warm, like thyme and ash. You wonder what it would feel like to live here, always surrounded by jars and silence and stories that only get whispered once. You understand now why many would not survive a day in a place like this. It is not the leeches, or the blood, or the shadows. It is the slowness, the stillness, the refusal to rush, to look away, to pretend that healing isn't strange. You watch Briel one last time as she places a fresh linen cover over a patient's chair, wipes the table with lavender water, and lights a final tapered candle beside the window. Its light flickers against the jars, against the stones, against your closing eyes, and somewhere just beyond the edge of sleep, you think you hear it again, the river whispering your name like it remembers you. Sleep does not come suddenly in the Leech house. It drifts. It gathers like fog rolling in over the river, slow and quiet and full of memory. And even if you never fully close your eyes, your thoughts begin to sway like drying herbs in the rafters gently, without protest. You sit there, or perhaps lie back now, unsure of how much time has passed. The fire has shrunk to faint orange coals, and even the leeches seem to be resting in their glass bowls. Nothing here demands attention. Everything waits. Rio returns from the garden, though you hadn't heard her leave. Her steps are nearly soundless. She carries a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside you glimpse dried nettle, burdock root, and what looks like crushed acorns. She sets the bundle aside and kneels near the jars, humming a different tune this time. It's slower, lower, like something meant to stir the earth. Not all who come here want healing, she says after a time, brushing dust from a jar's lid. Some come just to be seen. Some come because the world outside doesn't know what to do with them anymore. She doesn't look at you when she speaks. She's talking more to the room, to the herbs, to the weight of silence that never leaves this place. You think about that as you trace the patterns in the stone wall beside you. So many people pass through here, and yet the house remains unchanged. A witness, a keeper, a quiet companion to 1,000 unspoken stories. As Brielle moves about the room adjusting cloths, placing new leaves in old satchels, she begins telling you about a visitor who never left. A man older than most, with a tremble in his hand and a fire in his voice. He came one autumn and asked for nothing, just a place to sit. She gave him a stool and a cup of broth, and he sat beside the jars for 3 days. Said nothing, ate little, just sat and watched the leeches. On the 3rd day, he whispered, she died on a Tuesday. I never knew what to do with my hands after that. And then he left, quiet as fog, left behind a small ring made of braided iron, now resting on the house's altar. He didn't want the pain gone, she says softly, just witness. Sometimes that's enough. You hear the wind again, outside stronger now, tugging at the edges of the old wooden beams. A faint creaking moves through the bones of the house. It does not sound like fear. It sounds like memory. You walk slowly toward the altar, drawn by something you don't understand. The ring is still there, nestled between a tiny carved figurine and a bundle of dried wheat. Every item here is a story, you realize. Every item meant something once. Not valuable to the world outside, but sacred here. You feel a reverence settle over you, like standing in an old church or beneath ancient trees. The air holds something bigger than you. Brielle brings a small clay cup to you, filled with warm tea steeped in rose hips and crushed mint. For dreaming, she says. You sip it slowly, feeling it move through your chest, like warmth itself. You are almost entirely still now. You're not the first to come just to learn, she says after a long pause. But most don't stay the whole day. Too much quiet frightens people. You nod slowly, unsure whether you are truly awake or only dreaming her voice now. She continues working, her movements quiet and graceful, like someone who knows the rhythm of the house better than her own heartbeat. She tells you of other Leech houses, some still active, others long forgotten. One in the marshlands of Bohemia, where leeches were kept in cold cellars carved beneath churches. Another in the Scottish Highlands, where a family passed the knowledge down through generations like a recipe. She tells you how leeches were once so valuable they were locked in chests, guarded like coins. That the best ones, those that drank slow and deep, were named and never sold. We had one here, she whispers, that lived 17 years. She smiles at the memory, though her eyes grow misty. Her name was Fen. She knew when someone wasn't ready to let go. You imagine a single leech, old and wise, and strangely gentle, curled in a jar like a sleeping thought. The candlelight dances now, casting shadows that sway gently along the walls. The house hums in its quiet way, not with noise, but with presence. Brielle begins preparing the bed's narrow wooden cots near the hearth, each layered with thick woolen blankets, herbs stitched into their edges. She offers you one. You hesitate for only a moment, then accept. As you lie down, the scent of chamomile and smoke fills your senses. The blanket is heavy in the best way, like a shield against the world. You stare up at the ceiling where the herbs hang in neat rows, slowly spinning in the breeze. There's something hypnotic about them, like watching stars. Sleep, Brielle says, her voice barely a whisper. Let the house carry what you can't. You close your eyes. In the dark, you feel no fear, no urgency, only the soft rhythm of your own breathing and the knowledge that the jars still sit quietly around you, filled with strange, ancient life. The leeches do not watch. They only wait. The fire cracks once, and somewhere the river sighs. You are part of the Leech house now, not as a healer, not as a patient, but as someone who knows its breath, its stillness, its hush. And as you begin to slip deeper into sleep, one final thought drifts through your mind like the scent of lavender through smoke. You didn't come here to fix anything. You came here to listen. And that is enough. You dream, though it doesn't feel like dreaming. It feels like remembering something that never happened to you. The floorboards beneath the Leech house stretch long and endless in your mind, and the jars glow like lanterns in the dark. You walk barefoot through the quiet, the wooden planks warm from the day's fire. Somewhere in the distance, the soft plop of water echoes a leech returning to stillness, perhaps. You hear soft voices, not speaking words but emotions, grief that hums, relief that sighs, shame that lets go like exhaling. They swirl around you, but they don't touch you. The house keeps them at a respectful distance. When you wake, you aren't sure whether it's morning or simply another layer of the night. The hearth has died down to the faintest of glows, and moonlight spills in through the small, warped glass window and a puddle of silver on the stone floor. You sit up slowly. The woolen blanket slides off your shoulder. Everything aches in that soft, well-used way, like your muscles remember having existed, but not struggled. The scent of rosemary lingers faintly in the air, mingled with ash and river fog. You glance toward the rows of jars. The leeches are still, save for one coiling slowly in a lazy loop, like it's dreaming, too. The house is asleep, but not empty. It never feels empty. It always feels like someone is just out of sight, moving carefully so as not to wake the dust. You don't mind. You welcome it. Brielle is there, of course. She never truly sleeps. Or maybe she does, but only when the house itself allows her to. She's seated at the table now, sharpening a small, curved blade against a stone. It isn't for cutting flesh, it's for roots, she tells you, and for splitting tough reeds used in making wound poultices. She doesn't look up when you rise, but she speaks. The body does not always know when to stop holding, she says quietly. That's where we come in, to remind it that letting go is safe. She pours something from a blackened kettle into a mug, hands it to you without asking. It tastes of elderflower and bark. Calming, you sip it slowly, watching the steam drift upward in lazy spirals. You wonder how many people have sat exactly where you are, tasting exactly this, listening to that same rhythmic sharpening. The house remembers. You're sure of it now. She gestures to the ledger again. You walk over, your hand almost reverent as you turn its thick pages. The ink is faded in places, blurred by age or moisture. Names, dates, ailments, and occasionally a single note. Fear in her chest. Eyes not blinking. Heart pulled sideways by something unseen. You find a page dated many years ago. It simply says, refused treatment. Slept beside the jars. Left a feather. You wonder where that feather is now. Then you see it tucked near the altar shelf, nearly colorless from time. A soft gray reminder of someone who didn't want to be cured, only remembered. The next visitor arrives just before dawn, as a soft violet glow begins to warm the horizon. He is a traveler by the look of him, boots muddy, face lined, a scarf wrapped tightly around his neck, though the morning isn't cold. He speaks softly, but his voice is rough, like bark rubbed thin by wind. I lost my breath 2 nights ago, he says. I found it again, but it's not the same breath I used to have. Brielle nods. She doesn't question this. In this house, metaphors are not corrected. They are treated like symptoms. She asks him to sit near the hearth and offers him a jar to hold. It's empty. She doesn't explain why. He holds it gently, staring into the glass like he expects something to appear. After a moment, he whispers, "It feels like it's watching me from the inside." Brielle lights a sprig of dried sage and lets the smoke curl around the jar, then sets it on the stone near his feet. Some things, she says, need to see themselves before they can release you. He nods slowly. A tear rolls down his cheek. The house is silent except for the whisper of flame and the crack of old stone cooling in the walls. You stand very still, unsure whether to stay or retreat. Brielle touches your hand lightly. Stay, her silence says. Witnessing is part of healing. The man does not receive a leech. Not everyone does. Some people only need stillness. Some people only need to be in the presence of those who remember how to be unafraid of stillness. After he leaves quiet as all the others, Brielle takes the jar and places it on a shelf, separate from the others. Sometimes an empty jar is the medicine, she says. Outside, the world is slowly waking. The birds have begun their hesitant chirping, and the sky is the soft color of worn linen. You step outside for just a moment. The air is cold enough to sting slightly, but fresh, with the scent of moss and dew and smoke from a distant chimney. The river has risen overnight. You can hear it lapping softly against the stone embankment. It sounds like breathing. You return to the house and find Brielle preparing the morning poultices, crushing dried rose hips with a round stone, adding honey thick as resin, a touch of vinegar, a pinch of dried mint. The scent is sharper now. She applies it to a cloth and sets it in a wooden tray beside a cracked bowl. There is no rush, no urgency. Nothing here happens faster than it needs to. She glances toward you. Most people never learn to move slowly, she says. That's why they leave before the healing is finished. You know she's right. You felt that impulse once, maybe, to fill the silence with words, or to stand too quickly. But the Leech house trains it out of you, like a mother gently guiding a restless child into stillness. The next name in the ledger is yours. She's written it in the margins, just your first name. No ailment, no request, just a place held. Like she knew from the moment you arrived that you would become part of the house's memory too. And for the first time you understand. It's not just the jars that hold things here. The walls remember. The fire remembers. The silence remembers. And now, so do you. By now, the rhythm of the Leech house has become your own. You no longer look for clocks or ask what hour it is. The sun moves across the wooden floor in gentle stripes, and that is enough. The work is slow and thoughtful. You fetch clean cloths from the cedar chest near the back wall, hang new herbs to dry above the stove, refill the shallow stone bowls with water drawn from the well. Even the way you walk has softened less like a visitor, more like someone who knows how to belong without making noise. Real rarely gives instruction anymore. She simply gestures, and somehow your hands know what to do. Once she murmured, "You've become part of the quiet, and nothing more." And that felt like the highest praise in this place where silence is sacred. Today the wind carries a sharper bite, the kind that suggests the first threads of winter are being stitched into the air. The trees near the river have begun to thin, and their branches reach out like bone fingers. Inside, though, it is warm. The hearth fire burns low but steady. The scent of steeping elderberry fills the room like a soft song. A new visitor comes at midday, an older woman with silver hair and eyes that carry too many years. She walks with care, her shoes wrapped in cloth, and when she speaks, her voice is thin but clear. "I've come to forget," she says. "Just a little." "Not all," Breel only nods. "Then we'll ask the water to hold what you don't want to carry." The woman rests on a cushion by the window. Breel prepares a shallow bowl with warm water and crumbled rue leaves. She selects a small leech from a narrow jar, this one, barely the length of a thumb, nearly translucent. It curls around her finger like a whisper. She places it gently just above the woman's ankle. The old woman does not flinch. Her eyes remain closed. Breel sits beside her, humming that old lullaby once more. You listen from across the room, watching as the water in the bowl darkens slightly, taking on a faint rose tint. The leech drinks slowly, reverently. When it finishes, Breel whispers to it and places it in a jar with a sprig of mint. "To thank it," she says quietly. The woman opens her eyes. "I can't remember his voice anymore," she says, "but I don't think I need to." She leaves not long after, a small smile tucked into the corners of her mouth, like a folded letter. Breel places the used linen into a pot of steaming vinegar, wipes down the wooden stool with a cloth soaked in lavender. "Pain wants attention," she says, "but memory only wants respect." Later, as dusk begins to gather around the windows like old smoke, you help her prepare something she calls dream salve. It's thick, the color of rusted gold, and smells of thyme, poppy, and crushed fennel. She rubs a little on your wrists, and the scent follows you like a soft shadow. "It opens the gates," she says. "Let your thoughts walk a little slower." She tells you a story, then not one from the ledger, but from her own life. "When I was a girl, I watched a leech crawl across my brother's chest," she says, voice barely louder than the rustling of the drying herbs overhead. "He had fallen from a tree. Couldn't breathe right for days. My grandmother placed it just below his collarbone. We watched it drink until it fell asleep. And when it did, my brother opened his eyes and whispered, 'I feel lighter.' She doesn't say what happened to him after that. She doesn't need to. Some stories in this house are only meant to be remembered partway. You think of all the jars, all the names, all the quiet pain that has passed through these walls like wind through old trees. The house doesn't feel heavy with sorrow. It feels full with care, with quiet witness, with the kind of gentleness most people never receive until it's too late. That night a storm brushes past the Leech house. Rain patters against the thatched roof, and thunder rumbles far away, like a drum being played slowly. You and Briel do not speak much. The house has already said enough for the day. You sit by the fire, slowly drying a stack of washed cloths, while Briel grinds dried bark into powder for a wound salve. The rain softens to a whisper, then stops altogether. Before bed, she places a candle in the windowsill and lights it. For the river, she says, so it remembers we are still here. You fall asleep with the sound of frogs singing in the distance and the faint scent of basil on your pillow. Your dreams are gentle and quiet. You walk through halls filled with soft light. You hold a jar, and it holds you back. You wake once, just enough to shift under the blanket, and you swear you hear the house sigh content, like a mother watching her child sleep. By morning, the sky is pearl gray, and the river is moving slower than usual. The world feels paused, like it's holding its breath. You don't rush to get up. You sit beneath the blankets and listen, just listen, to the jars, to the fire, to your own quiet pulse. The leeches do not speak, but they remind you that healing does not always require words. Sometimes it only requires stillness. You rise slowly and begin preparing the day's water with hands that now know the work. You do not need guidance. You remember how the house has taught you. The morning light comes softly, spilling through the crooked wooden slats like honey poured through a sieve. It paints everything in pale gold, the stone floor, the worn pages of the ledger, even the round glass jars that line the walls like sentinels of old. You move through the house with the ease of someone who no longer needs to ask permission. The bowl of warm water is already steaming on the table. The linen wraps are folded and waiting. The herbs you hung 2 days ago have dried to crisp silence, their colors faded, their medicine preserved. Briel nods her approval without words. She is pressing dried leaves into bundles wrapped with twine charms of a sort. Not for curing, but for remembering. There is healing in memory, she says softly, even if it hurts. She places one of the bundles in your hands. Take it when you leave, she adds, as if the matter is settled. You don't respond. Not yet. Not with words. The thought of leaving feels like a sound you're not ready to make. Today's visitor arrives late, after the birds have already fallen quiet, and the world is wrapped in the hush of midday. He is younger than most, no more than 20, and his eyes are the kind that don't settle, always looking past you. He carries no satchel, no coin, just a thin wooden flute slung across his back by a fraying cord. I've forgotten the songs, he says, voice brittle like old parchment. I know I knew them once. Briel nods once, then walks to the shelves and selects a particular jar. She brings it over to the boy, but doesn't open it. She simply sets it on the table and sits across from him. You were born during a lunar eclipse, she says. The boy blinks. How do you know that? I don't, she replies, but I can feel the quiet in you. It's a lunar kind of quiet. She doesn't reach for the leech right away. Instead, she takes his hand and places it gently on the side of the jar. Inside, the leech moves, slow, ribbon-like, unbothered. The boy watches it in silence. Minutes pass, then more. Eventually, he closes his eyes, not to sleep, but to remember. After some time, Briel hums a note, just one. The boy listens, then tries to hum it back. It comes out cracked and uneven, but there is something true inside it. He tries again, and again, and then, quietly from deep within his throat, a melody begins to form. It's incomplete, frayed, but it's there. He doesn't stay long after that, just long enough to bow his head and whisper, "Thank you." He leaves behind the flute. Brielle doesn't stop him. She places it beside the altar, near the iron ring and the faded feather. "For memory," she says. The rest of the day passes like a slow breath. You help wash out the jars and change the water-delicate work, almost ceremonial. Brielle shows you how to add a few drops of tincture to each, a blend of herbs she never names, only calls the remembering mix. It keeps the leeches calm, keeps them dreaming. In the quiet that follows, you find yourself at the window, staring out at the river. It has risen again, creeping toward the banks like it wants to come closer to the house. You remember Brielle's words, how the river listens. You wonder what it hears when it flows past this place. Do the ripples carry away all the pain unspoken? Do the reeds whisper stories back into the current? That evening, a strange visitor arrives, if you can call him that. He is not sick, not sorrowful, not even fully present. He is mute, perhaps by choice, tall and thin, with skin the color of old clay and eyes that flicker like candlelight. He says nothing when Brielle opens the door, but she lets him in with a nod and gestures toward the seat by the fire. She prepares nothing, no leeches, no salves, no tea. She only sits across from him and stares into his eyes, as if she's reading the lines of a language written long before speech. At last she speaks. "You're not here for healing." The man doesn't move. "You're here to watch," she says, voice steady but soft. "You want to know if it's still real." The man closes his eyes and places a coin on the table, strange, dark, not like any currency you've seen. Brielle doesn't touch it. She only breathes. After a long pause, she nods. The man leaves with the same silence he arrived in, the coin still resting on the table like a punctuation mark. Brielle finally speaks to you again. Some think what we do is lost, that it's myth or dream or superstition. She looks at the coin without touching it, but they always come back, even if they say nothing. That night, as you fold the clean linen cloths and blow out the lamps, you feel something shift inside you, not dramatically, not loudly, but quietly, like a door opening just a crack. You feel less like a guest now, less like a passerby. You sleep near the hearth again. Your dreams are different this time, not of leeches or jars or whispered pain, but of water, deep, slow-moving, dark and kind. In the dream, you place your hands in the river and feel it pull something gently from your chest, something you didn't know was heavy, something you hadn't named. When you wake, you understand why so many leave something behind, why the altar grows heavier with feathers, rings, scraps of song, because this house is not just a place for removing illness. It is a place to unburden. The morning after the river dream, you wake slowly, as if your body is unsure whether it wants to return from the place you've just been. You stretch beneath the blanket, every joint creaking like the beams of the house above you. The fire has gone cold, but not fully out. A single curl of warmth still breathes beneath the ash. You stir it gently, adding a few pieces of kindling. The flames rise with a soft, contented sigh, like the house itself was waiting for the warmth to return. You hear Brielle's steps behind you, soft but steady. She sets a cup beside you without a word. Hot water, steeped with dried lemon balm, and crushed apple peel. You hold it close, watching the steam dance upward. In that moment, there is no need for conversation. The silence says enough. She finally speaks, though her voice is far away. The Leeches knew you were coming, she says. They always do. You turn to her. She isn't smiling, but there is something warm in her expression. She sits across from you and runs a hand along the table's old grain. This house was not built for comfort, she says quietly. It was built for honesty. Most people fear that more than they fear the blood. You say nothing. You don't need to. You understand now. Later you help her carry the fresh water from the river. The buckets are heavy, but the rhythm is meditative step. Breathe, shift, pour. She shows you how to strain the water through linen soaked in vinegar, then rest it in wide-mouthed clay bowls before adding it to the Leech jars. Each creature is tended to as if it were something sacred. You see how Brielle moves around them, not with fear, not with affection, but with respect. These beings, she says, placing a hand against one of the jars, they don't just feed. They take what we won't let go of. That's why some people faint. Some weep. Some feel nothing at all until days later. The day is quiet. The house remains cool, despite the faint touch of sun through the shutters. No visitors come. This happens sometimes, Brielle explains. The house knows when to rest. She takes these rare, quiet days to mend. You help her stitch new wraps from old cloth, learning the gentle loop of thread through thick linen. She works in silence until the light begins to shift. Then, without warning, she tells you a story. Years ago, a man brought his daughter here. She couldn't speak, wouldn't eat. He thought she was bewitched. She'd stopped laughing, stopped playing her lute, stopped responding to anyone. She only stared out the window and wept without sound. Brielle pauses to knot her thread. He begged me to fix her. I told him I could not, but I could listen to her silence. She placed a leech on the girl's wrist. Just one. The girl didn't flinch. Afterward she said nothing, but she picked up her lute and played a single note. Just one. That night the man left with tears on his shirt and music on the wind. You glance at the shelf near the altar. A lute string, tied in a perfect bow, hangs beside a small seashell and a carved button. You now recognize them for what they are. Stories, moments, proofs of return. When night comes, the house dims itself. No one needs to light the candles on command. The light seems to know when to soften. You sit by the hearth, sipping warm wine mixed with herbs Brielle calls moonflowers, though you know that's not their true name. Everything here is softened, veiled, patient. You speak for the first time in hours. Why do you stay here? Always? She stares into the fire, her face illuminated in flickers. Because the world outside wants quick things, she says. Quick answers, quick healing, quick forgetting. But here, people remember how to be slow, how to feel again. You let the silence return. The wind howls faintly outside. The old beams groan in reply. But nothing feels alarming. Even the storm feels like an old friend passing through. The jars glow faintly in the firelight. Their contents curl and twist with dream-like movement, unconcerned with your watching. Before you sleep, Brielle places a stone in your hand. It is smooth and round, with a single crack running down the middle. For grounding, she says. If your dreams pull too far, this will remind you of the weight you still carry. You keep it in your palm as you drift into sleep, lying once more beneath the woolen blanket. The scent of marjoram and crushed cloves lingers in the air. Somewhere far off, a night bird calls once, then falls silent. Your dream that night is not a story. It is a feeling, a warmth, a breath, a river of memory so slow and wide that it carries not images, but truths. You float on its surface, arms wide, and feel something lift from your chest. Not pain, not joy, just something unnamed that no longer needs to be held. When you wake, the stone is still in your hand, warm, and in the silence of the house you hear the faintest sound like a voice far away, whispering thank you, or maybe welcome back. You carry the warm stone with you as the morning deepens, cupped gently in your palm like an ember that refuses to fade. The sun outside is quiet today, hiding behind a veil of cloud that diffuses the light into something pale and timeless. The Leech house feels almost untouched by the hours. You've been here long enough now that you no longer know what day it is, and that truth does not bother you. The outside world runs on time and tolling bells and passing carts, but this place runs on breath, on stillness, on the slow rhythm of healing that cannot be rushed. Breel is already up, kneeling near the hearth, burning juniper branches in the small iron brazier. The smoke is light but fragrant, earthy, green, just the faintest bite of something like pepper and pine. She waves it gently toward the jars, letting the scent curl through the shelves like a blessing. Cleanses the air, she says softly, and calms the restless ones. You help her air out the linens today. Together you step outside where the mist still clings to the grass and dew coats every blade. The air is cool on your skin, and you breathe it in slowly. Behind the house, the river is wide and slow, like a mirror reflecting the sky's mood. You hang the claws on a line strung between two bent trees, their trunks white with lichen, their roots hugging the soil like ancient knuckles. While you work, Breel tells you about the old Leech houses that were built beside churches, or deep in the woods, or along hidden creeks. They had different names, she says. Some called them blood cottages, some called them sorrow houses. Others simply said the place you go when you've carried too much. Her voice is calm, but the weight of history lingers behind her words. She turns to you then, gently. You'll have to choose soon, she says, whether you stay or whether you carry what you've learned back out into the world. She does not ask for an answer. She does not press. She simply plants the thought, like a seed dropped into damp earth, and returns to her folding. You're quiet for the rest of the morning. Later, a young couple arrives at the door travelers by the look of them, pale with dust, their cloaks heavy with dampness. The man holds his side and winces with each step. The woman's eyes are filled with quiet fear, but she says nothing beyond a whispered, "Please." Breel gestures them in with care. She places the man on the cot near the fire and helps him remove his outer garments. Beneath them, a deep bruise blooms across his ribs, dark and angry. "A fall," the woman explains. "He struck a stone crossing the river. He hasn't slept." Breel says nothing at first. She simply kneels, examines the bruise, and places her hand just beside it, not pressing, only resting. She closes her eyes. "The pain is traveling," she says. "It's not just the body." She selects 2 leeches from separate jars, thin and dark, their movements steady. She places them not on the bruise, but on his shoulder and the space beneath his collarbone. He flinches once, then breathes. His body sinks deeper into the cot, and slowly his face loosens from its grimace. While the leeches work, Briel gives the woman a mug of warm Valyrian tea and sits beside her. The woman does not speak. She sips quietly, and in the flicker of the firelight, her face softens. She leans her head on Briel's shoulder, just for a moment, like a child in a moment of forgetting. When they leave, hours later, they leave behind a necklace with a small wooden cross. It was his mother's, the woman says. She would have trusted this place. Briel sets the necklace on the altar, but not among the others. She places it on a nail above the fire, where the heat will slowly darken the wood. For strength, she murmurs. That evening, the sky turns a shade of lavender you've never quite seen before. You and Briel sit by the river, your legs curled beneath you on the mossy stones. She teaches you how to listen to the water, not just the sound, but the rhythm. It's slower than us, she says. That's why it sees things we miss. You ask her if the river ever forgets. No, she replies, but it forgives. As night falls, you help her light the lanterns. Not all at once, one by one. Slowly, you place them near the jars, near the threshold, near the table where tinctures sleep in their dark glass bottles. Each flame flickers gently, casting small halos that do not chase away the dark, but soften it. Before bed, Briel gives you a piece of parchment, folded, unmarked. Write what you wish to leave here, she says. No one will read it. The house will take care of it. You sit at the edge of your cot, the fire a faint hush behind you, and think. Your hand moves slowly. The ink is light. You do not write a story. You write a feeling, a weight, a memory you've been holding without knowing. When you're done, you fold the paper and slide it beneath the stones at the base of the hearth, where dozens of others have likely gone. Sleep comes soon after, deep, dreamless, like a stone dropped gently into a still pond. You awaken before the sun rises, while the sky is still a deep, sleepy blue, and the wind barely moves the branches beyond the shutters. The air is cool and smells faintly of ash and thyme. The fire has gone out completely this time, and the house is wrapped in a hush so complete, even the leeches seem stiller than usual. It is the kind of morning that feels like a pause, like the world itself is holding its breath before it begins again. You sit up slowly. Your blanket falls away and folds, and you stretch your legs over the side of the cot, feet meeting the cold stone floor with a gentle chill. You move quietly, not because you are trying to be silent, but because it feels wrong to break the spell of this moment. The Leech house at dawn is not a place for footsteps or speech. It is a cathedral of breath. Briel is not in her usual place by the hearth. You find her outside, seated on a low stone near the river, wrapped in a cloak the color of dusk. Her hair is unbound today, falling in long silver strands down her back, catching the light of the sky as it begins to change. She does not look up as you approach. She only pats the stone beside her. You sit, and the two of you watch the river together in silence. After some time she speaks, her voice no louder than the rustle of leaves. Some mornings I remember too much. You don't ask what she means. You only wait. That's how things are done here, she continues. I remember the first soul I couldn't help. I remember the first one I did. I remember when I first thought I would leave, and when I realized I never would. You glance at her hands. Even at rest, they seem filled with memory lines deepened by years of mixing salves and sorting herbs and coaxing blood from stubborn veins. But they are not warm. They are steady, alive. She looks at you, finally. This house keeps what we give it. Every breath, every tear, every word said or unsaid. Then she turns back to the water. It remembers you now, whether you stay or not. You sit beside her as the sky turns the color of old cream, the sun beginning to edge over the hills. Mist rises from the river in slow curls, and a distant heron lifts itself from the bank with a heavy, graceful motion. You feel no need to speak. When you return to the house, Brielle begins preparing the house for another day. She hums under her breath something minor, something older than language. You help her grind dried bark into powder, then stir it with honey and vinegar in a smooth clay bowl. She shows you how to fold the mixture into linen sachets, which will be used for drawing heat from fevers. Later, a girl arrives, no more than 10 years old, with hair the color of firewood and eyes that do not meet yours. Her mother leads her gently, murmuring apologies with every step. She hasn't spoken in weeks, the woman says. Not since the night the storm broke the roof. She just sits and stares, doesn't cry, doesn't eat. Brielle does not offer pity. She simply guides the girl to a stool near the window, where the light is softest. She kneels beside her and places a warm hand on the girl's knee. "You're not broken," she says gently. "You're just quieting the noise." The girl does not reply. Brielle prepares a bowl of water infused with lemon balm and violet leaves and sets it beside the girl. Then she selects the smallest leech you've ever seen, no longer than a hairpin. She places it not on the girl's skin, but in the water. The leech begins to move, slow and graceful, circling the edges of the bowl like a little ink stroke come to life. The girl watches. She doesn't blink. After a time, Brielle begins to tell a story. Not a loud one, not even a finished one. A soft tale about a river that forgot how to flow and a willow tree that whispered it back to life. She speaks as though the house itself is listening. You notice the girl's shoulders loosen. Her hands relax in her lap. Brielle ends the story without a conclusion. The river never asked for thanks, she says. It only wanted to be remembered. The girl reaches out just one finger and dips it gently into the bowl. The leech curls around it and lets go again. And for the first time, the girl speaks. "Will it remember me too?" Brielle smiles. "It already has." The mother weeps quietly. She leaves a coin wrapped in a faded ribbon, and the girl leaves behind a button carved with a sun. It joins the altar that evening, nestled beside the flute and the feather. That night, Brielle speaks of legacy, of how Leech keepers once trained their children in secret, passing down the knowledge, not through books, but by memory, by touch, by breath. "There are some things you cannot write," she says. "They must be lived." You ask her if she's had an apprentice before. "Not in years," she replies, "but sometimes someone simply stays long enough to become one." The fire burns lower. The jars are quiet. The river hums outside the window like it's singing to the moon. And in that warm, candle-lit hush you begin to wonder, not if you could leave, but whether you ever truly will. The next morning comes with soft rain tapping against the thatch above your head. Not the kind that floods or chills or startles, but a gentle, persistent misting, like the sky exhaling slowly over the earth. It softens everything it touches. The stone windowsill feels cooler under your hand. The jars fog slightly from the shift in warmth. Even the wood in the hearth pops with a quieter sort of voice, like it, too, is trying not to disturb the hush. You rise slowly, as you have learned to do. There is no bell to answer, no schedule to race, only the work and the rhythm of breath between movements. Brielle has already started the fire, her shawl drawn around her shoulders, her hair tied with a strip of worn linen. She moves about the house like she is part of it, not an occupant, but an extension, the way water fits the shape of its jar. You begin the day's tending without words. Together you remove the covers from the jars, wiping away the condensation gently with pieces of soft cloth steeped in rosemary water. Some of the leeches rest coiled and still. Others respond to the warmth of the room and the presence of your breath, beginning to curl, rise, float. They are slow dancers, patient ones. As you pass the fire, you notice something new, an old bundle of parchment tied with twine, resting on the table where Brielle keeps her notes and tincture recipes. She catches your glance and nods. "Read them when you're ready," she says, "not before." You don't open them just yet. Something tells you they are not instructions, but invitations. The day remains still. No visitors come. Brielle says this happens after long runs of need, that the house itself takes a kind of breath. It listens just as much in stillness as it does in crisis, she says. She decides to take you into the forest behind the Leech house for gathering, not far just beyond the bend in the river, where the trees grow thick and wet and green, even in the dying light of the season. You follow her along the narrow trail, moss growing like velvet beneath your boots, bird song kept minimal by the misty air. She points out elder trees, their bark like rough lace, comfrey nestled under brambles, a tiny patch of skullcap, blooming in lavender blue bursts between the roots of an ash. "Not every healer knows what to look for," she murmurs. "They chase only what's named. But the earth gives whispers, not instructions. You collect carefully, never more than needed, always leaving the smallest plant untouched. She teaches you to thank each cutting, not aloud, but with touch, a gentle press of your fingertips to the root left behind. As you walk, Brielle tells you about her own teacher, a woman named Isabat, who lived alone in a stone hut, surrounded by nettles, and had a black goat that followed her like a shadow. She said all pain is a story, Brielle recalls, and leeches are just very old listeners. You laugh softly, and she does too, the first time you've heard that sound low, cracked, warm. She walks a little slower beside you after that. By the time you return, your basket is full and your legs pleasantly sore. The house welcomes you back without fanfare. The fire still burns. The jars still glow. You hang the herbs to dry while Brielle prepares a small meal of barley soup and apple slices warmed with cloves. She hands you a bowl and speaks gently. Tonight you read the parchments. So after the soup, when the jars are dimmed and the fire has soft to low flickers, you sit at the wide table and untie the bundle. The parchment is old, but not crumbling. It has been read many times. It smells faintly of pressed flowers and dried blood. The first page is a letter, not addressed to anyone by name, only to the one who stays. The handwriting is slow, beautiful, full of loops and thoughtful spaces. You read quietly, your fingers resting lightly on the edge. It tells the story of the house, how it was built, not by masons, but by memory, how each stone was laid with intention, how the first leech was kept in a jar carved from river glass, how healers came and went, but the house remained. It tells of women who left only after they had forgotten what silence felt like, of children who returned as old men, of pain that changed shape once it had been seen. Each page holds a lesson, but not one of facts. These are teachings of rhythm, of intuition, of surrender. You read slowly, almost reverently. At times you pause not because you are tired, but because the silence between the words needs to be heard too. When you finish, Brielle is already preparing your cot, placing a bundle of warmed herbs beneath the pillow. "You've begun," she says. She doesn't say what that means, but you understand. That night your dreams come in fragments. You see the jars, but they hold memories, not leeches. You see the river, but it speaks in your voice. You see the house, but it has no roof, only stars. You sleep with your hand closed around a sprig of dried yarrow, and in the morning you wake not refreshed, but changed, as if something within you has stopped waiting. You don't rise right away. The warmth under your blanket clings to your limbs like a second skin, and you lie there, listening. The house creaks softly as it settles into the morning, wood expanding and shifting in the slow way old buildings do when they've known weather for generations. The scent of the herb bundle under your pillow lingers in the air, bitter, earthy, a little sweet. You breathe it in, feeling it coat your lungs with calm. When you do stand, your feet touch the cold stone and you let yourself shiver. It wakes you gently. Brielle has already left the room, though her cup is still steaming on the windowsill, a sprig of sage floating in its surface. The sky outside is low and gray again, clouds heavy with unshed rain. The air feels like it's holding something back. You find Brielle in the corner of the Leech room, tending to a jar that looks different from the others. It's older, not clouded with breath or age, but etched with strange markings you haven't seen on any of the others. She's whispering to the Leech's inside quiet, rhythmic words you can't fully hear. It sounds like a prayer or a lullaby. She finishes and turns to you, her voice still wrapped in that hush. "This jar hasn't been opened in 12 winters," she says. "They're dream-bound." She places her hand on the glass. "We don't use them for healing, not of the body, only the mind." She leaves it at that and moves on, lighting a small pot of melted beeswax and crushing dried dandelion root into it with the back of a spoon. You help her with the mixture, stirring slowly, carefully. She teaches you how to test the consistency on your thumb, just firm enough to stay in place, just soft enough to melt with skin warmth. "This one is for aching grief," she tells you. "When sorrow doesn't cry, but it still sits behind the ribs." You nod. You know what that feels like. Most people do, even if they don't know what to call it. Just before midday, another visitor comes. A priest this time, dressed in simple robes with mud-dried hems and hands that tremble slightly as he crosses the threshold. He does not look afraid, only heavy, like someone who has been carrying too many confessions and has run out of space to store them. He does not offer pleasantries. He removes his hat, bows his head, and says only, "I've forgotten how to feel forgiven." Brielle takes no time. She points to the chair beside the fire. She gathers 3 things: a sprig of St. John's wort, a single black leech from a hidden jar beneath the floorboards, and a small stone wrapped in red string. She places the stone in the priest's hand, the herb beneath his tongue, and the leech on the inside of his wrist. He does not flinch. He breathes. She doesn't speak. Neither do you. The room becomes a space of stillness again, filled only with fire crackles and the slow pulse of breath. The leech swells as it drinks, and the priest's face begins to soften, just slightly, like ice warming. When she removes the leech and wraps the wrist in fresh linen, the priest doesn't thank her. He simply touches his forehead to the top of the jar and weeps silently. He leaves behind a page torn from a psalter. You don't ask which passage. Briel tucks it gently behind a row of bottles marked only with lines and scratches, no words, just memory. You spend the rest of the afternoon learning the language of the ledger. It's more than a log. It's a map written in symbols, codes, and fated lines that only someone who's listened deeply would understand. Briel shows you how to read the curves, the spacing, the hesitations in the ink. Every space between names tells a story. Some names are underlined in green. These are the ones who came too late. Others are circled faintly with ash. These came back, she says, not all with their bodies, but in other ways. She hands you a fresh page, a blank one. You hesitate. Then write your own name at the top, the ink trembling slightly from the weight of it. You do not add an ailment. Only a symbol one that means becoming. That night the sky clears for the first time in days. The stars show faintly through the mist, blinking like embers left in a long, cold hearth. Briel sets a bowl of water outside the threshold and sprinkles crushed chamomile into it. For dreams, she says, for protection. You watch the moonlight catch in the water's surface and ripple softly outward. You do not ask what it protects you from. You lie down with your stone again, this time pressed against your heart. You close your eyes, and the house seems to sigh with you. The herbs overhead sway slightly in the breeze, and the jars settle into quiet, silvery shapes in the dark. The fire hums. The house hums. And then, so do you. This time when you dream, you see the house from above, not as a visitor, but as part of it. Its crooked roof, speckled with moss and wood smoke, blends with the earth like it was grown, not built. You see the shelves inside glowing faintly in the dark, each jar like a small lantern, a keeper of memory. The jars breathe. The herbs whisper. The floor hums like a drum pressed against the heartbeat of the world. It is not a dream of people. It is a dream of the house remembering itself. When you wake, it is still dark, but a different kind of dark pre-dawn, where silence is thickest and everything feels slightly farther away. You do not rush to rise. You lie still for a long time, your hands resting gently on your ribs, feeling your breath move like river water through reeds. You listen to the small creaks, the faint drip of condensation falling into a wooden bowl, the sound of soft shifting behind the walls. The leeches are awake before the light. When you sit up, Briel is already at the altar shelf. She's not lighting candles, not sorting jars. She's simply sitting. One hand rests on her knee, the other on the small wooden cross that was left by the traveler days ago. Her eyes are open, but far away, as though they're looking at a memory stretched across the air. You join her quietly. She doesn't move, but her voice reaches you like a thread being unspooled slowly. Some people ask what happens to the pain we take. A pause. Where it goes once it leaves the body. You wait. The fire doesn't crack. The house doesn't breathe. We keep it here, she says, but not to hold it forever, only until it's ready to be buried. You glance toward the jars. She follows your gaze, not just in them, in the floor, the walls, the altar, the woods. There are places where the house stores grief so it doesn't spill over. Later, she brings you a spade and a bundle wrapped in cloth. You know, without asking, this is part of the work. You follow her down the slope behind the Leech house, past the outer ring of nettles and wild mint, down to a grove where the trees lean in toward one another like old friends holding secrets. There's a patch of earth already soft, a ring of stones. Nothing marked with names, but you know this is the burying ground, not for bodies, but for what was too heavy to carry elsewhere. She kneels, you kneel. Together in silence you place the bundle into the earth. You cover it with soil. You press your palms to the ground, not to mark, not to bless, just to acknowledge. You don't speak, you don't cry, but something in you eases. Back in the house, she offers you a piece of parchment. A different kind, this time heavier, stained faintly with old smoke. It's time you wrote your first entry, she says. You opened the ledger, the real one. Not the copy she let you study, not the book of training, but the one with soft leather binding and decades of breath caught between its pages. You turn to a clean space near the back. There is a blank page waiting. You write slowly. The name is not yours this time. It's someone who came on your second day, a girl with a burned hand and a silent mouth. You remember her, even though she stayed only an hour. You write her name in careful script, just like Brielle showed you. You draw a symbol beside it. Then you close the book gently and return it to the shelf. The day passes in a rhythm you no longer have to think about. You prepare water, you stir salves, you gather herbs. You answer a soft knock at the door, and you guide a man inside whose eyes are sunken and whose knuckles are raw. He speaks little. You do not press. You show him the fire. You bring him a cloth-wrapped stone for his hand. You listen. You place 2 leeches on the backs of his knees, just where Brielle showed you, and he exhales like someone who has not taken a breath in months. You do this without Brielle's help, and when he leaves, Brielle gives you a look that holds no pride, no surprise, only knowing. You're remembering now, she says. That's all it takes. That evening, she unrolls a cloth on the table. Inside are tools ancient, hand-carved, smoothed by years of use. Small knives, bone-handled tweezers, a jar with no label. She lets you hold each one, tells you their names, what they do, when to use them, when to never use them. Most of this, she says, you'll never need. But it's not the tools that matter. It's the stillness you bring to the moment. She folds the cloth again and tucks it back into the chest. You sense it is a kind of right. You are being trusted. That night, you sleep without the stone. Not because you don't need it, but because you know where it is, where everything is. You carry the quiet inside now. You dream again, but this time the house is not alone. There are others, other houses, other jars, other fires, and you know without question that the work does not end here. It only begins. Morning drifts in like a sigh, slipping gently through the windows and pooling on the stone floor in soft ribbons of amber light. The house smells of wet earth, burned herbs, and something faintly sweet dried apple, perhaps, or chamomile, simmering in a pot you haven't seen yet. You sit up slowly, stretching beneath the woolen blanket, feeling the shape of your own body like it's something you've just grown back into. There is no rush. There never is. You've stopped reaching for time the way people outside this house do. There's no need to check how far the sun has climbed or count the minutes until the next task. You rise when the house stirs, and you rest when it sleeps. Reel is pouring hot water over bundles of dried thyme and valerian, letting the steam rise in curling plumes that carry through the beams and over the jars. She nods to you, not as a greeting, but as a silent reminder that you're part of this now. There is comfort in that being seen without being summoned. Together you tend the leeches. You move with instinct now, checking water clarity, the color of their skins, the rhythm of their motions. You've learned that some leeches rest in long spirals when they've fed well. Others float just under the surface when they're searching for a new vessel to listen to. They each have a language, a shape of movement, a presence that needs no voice. Reel speaks softly as you work. When I was your age, she says, I believed healing was about fixing. But here, she trails off, her fingers brushing over the top of a jar. I learned that healing is about witnessing, staying with what hurts, until it softens. You ask her in a whisper, did it soften for you? She smiles, but the answer doesn't come in words. It comes in the way she moves, measured, grounded, like someone who carries a heavy pot with ease. Not because the weight disappeared, but because she learned how to hold it properly. The door knocks, not loudly, just twice, soft and slow. You answer it. A woman stands there, her hands wrapped in a shawl despite the warming day. Her face is lined not with age, but with holding. A woman holding grief, holding silence, holding something she no longer wants. My son passed last spring, she says, but I still hear him every night, just after the candles go out. You step aside and let her in. She walks without direction straight to the fire, where she kneels as if she already knows the house's language. Reel doesn't ask for details. She places a pillow beneath the woman's knees, a jar near her side, and a small clay bowl filled with warm salt water near her feet. She selects one leech black and glistening, thick as a thumb, and places it gently along the inside of the woman's forearm. The woman watches it latch, eyes wide but calm. Her breathing slows. Her shoulders fall. As it drinks, Reel begins to hum not a lullaby, not a song, but something low and droning, a tone that seems to come from somewhere deeper than her chest. The woman closes her eyes. You feel something leave the room, not escape, not flee, but lift, like breath released after being held too long. When the leech is full, Reel removes it and sets it in a special jar, one marked only with a faint white line. She won't need another, she says. Some visits are for letting go, not curing. The woman leaves without taking anything, but she touches the door frame on her way out, pressing her forehead gently against it. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. You sit in the stillness that follows, and it wraps around you like a second skin. That afternoon, you begin learning the work of preparation, not just tending and observing, but creating. Reel shows you how to mix and dry pastes for poultices, how to steep oils from herbs, how to read the sound of boiling water to know when it's time to remove the flame. You crush dried nettle leaves into fine powder. You strain tinctures through linen. You roll cotton bandages tight enough to store but soft enough to unfold with one hand. You will teach someone someday, Reel says. You blink. I don't think I'm ready. No one is, she says. That's how you know you're close. Evening comes quietly. The house seems to slow with the dark. Candles are lit not all at once, just in the rooms that need them. You light the one by the ledger, then one near the herbs, then one beside the jar marked with the white line. Brielle writes a note in their quiet hand on a scrap of bark, held and released, and slips it behind the altar shelf. She offers you a cup of dark tea tonight, brewed longer, heavier. This one will open the door a little more, she says. It's up to you how far to walk. You sip slowly. Later, she hands you a folded cloth and tells you, gently, go to the dream room. You've never been there. You didn't know it had a name. She guides you to a door you thought led to storage. Inside, it's dim. One cot, one jar, one candle. The walls are lined with thick black fabric, and the air smells of lavender and stone. It's silent in a way that pulls you inward. She leaves you there, and you lie down. The blanket is heavy and warm. The candle flickers like a heartbeat. You rest your palm over your chest and feel your breath soften, stretch, settle. Your eyes close, and the house slips in beside you, breathing in time. And then you dream again. But this time it's not the house you see. It's you, sitting in Brielle's place. And someone else knocking on the door. When you wake, the room is still dim. Though not from lack of light, the candle has burned low, but it's the weight of silence that softens the space. You lie there for a moment, not fully returned. The dream clings to you, not as a story, but as a feeling. A warm hand on your shoulder, the echo of your own breath inside someone else's chest. You remember the knock at the door. You remember standing to answer it. You sit up slowly. The blanket falls away and folds. The stone beneath your feet is cool, but it doesn't startle you. It welcomes you back with weight and texture, a grounding sensation after such a long, still drift. You fold the blanket neatly, just as Brielle does, and step into the hallway. The house is awake. It doesn't speak, but you feel it through the scent of rosemary steeping over the fire, the faint splash of water in the jars, the way the shutters creak just a little in the morning breeze. The house does not ask where you've been. It already knows. Brielle is at the hearth, kneeling as she feeds the flames. Her eyes lift when she sees you, and in them is something gentle and unspoken. Pride would be the wrong word. There's no triumph here, only recognition. You dreamed it, she says. You nod. And you remember it? You don't speak. You just place your hand on the table where the ledger waits. She slides it toward you, already open to a blank page. Not near the back, closer to the center now. Like a stone added to a bridge, not an afterthought at the end of a path. She gives you the quill. You write. This time it's not just a name. It's the beginning of a story, a full entry, a moment captured. Not just who came, but why, what they left behind, what they took with them. You include the symbols, the time of day, the scent of the air. A small note, wound not visible, but opened anyway. You finish with a line. Brielle taught you yesterday, let this one drift. She reads it when you finish, then closes the book with both hands and rests it on the shelf. You've done what many cannot, she says. You look at her, the lines around her eyes, the way she stands, as if she's always half listening to something beneath the floorboards. You stayed long enough to be changed. That afternoon, you walk the riverbank alone for the first time. You carry a small satchel Brielle gave you, with a tiny jar of ash salve, a strip of waxed cloth, and one smooth stone wrapped in nettle thread. She called it a beginning kit, but said nothing more. The river is high today, glinting with sun and silver foam. You kneel near a bend where the reeds are tallest and press your palm to the earth. You listen. The river does not rush. It remembers. You stay there a long while. When you return, Brielle is sitting on the steps. She looks up and gestures beside her. You sit together. No need to speak. After some time, she reaches into her cloak and hands you a small bundle of folded linen. Inside is a single leech, not marked, not named, just placed. For when you hear your first silence, she says, the weight of it in your palm is strangely comforting. Not heavy, not cold, just alive. That evening a visitor arrives. A young man with a twisted ankle and eyes that do not meet yours. He stumbles into the house on his own. You take him in. You guide him to the fire. You sit him down. You gather the herbs. Brielle watches from the corner. You do not wait for instruction. You prepare the poultice. You heat the cloth. You clean the wound. You choose the leech. Not one of the ones from the outer shelf, but a small, amber-striped one that's been waiting in the jar beside the ledger. You place it gently just above the swelling. You hum, not a tune, just a tone, steady, grounding. The young man breathes. Brielle nods. Later, when the visitor has gone and the jars have been closed, you wash your hands with rosemary water and sit at the ledger. You write another entry. And this time, when you sign your name, you do not hesitate. You are no longer the guest, no longer the observer, no longer the one wondering what it feels like to stay. You are the one who knows, the one who will keep the jars warm, the fire steady, and the silence whole. And when you lie down that night beneath the rafters and the slow-turning bundles of herbs, you feel the weight of the house not as something on top of you, but as something within you. Your breath matches its breath. Your stillness matches its stillness. The house does not sleep. It waits. But now, it waits with you, because the healer no longer walks alone.